Jaya Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Gaurachandra Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Gadadhar Jaya Srinivas Jaya Mukunda Vasudevi Jaya Haridas.
Hare Krishna. My wife Cintamani and I are very honored and humbled to be invited to share something within this wonderful series of presentations on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Caitanya Caritamrta. Although we're not qualified to speak on these topics, we are praying that we can offer something that may be beneficial to the devotees and our ISKCON communities. And we're begging for the help and blessings of our acharyas and the assembly of valsnavas. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Iti Namani Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Suttamani Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskacha Desacharane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasali Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapatruvyascha Kripasindhuyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna. So our title for today is The Joy of Selfless Service, Grihastha Guidelines from the Caitanya Caritamrta. Of course, there's a multitude of guidelines in the Caitanya Caritamrta and our rich and eternal Krishna conscious philosophy. We'd like to share today some key guidelines which we feel are at the essence of our philosophy and how they've inspired us and our Krishna conscious practice as Grihasthas. So the first part of the title is The Joy of Selfless Service. The term joy was chosen quite intentionally, inspired by the founder of the Grihastha Vision Team, Her Grace, Mother Krishnanandini Devi Dasi, who left her body in November 2020. She often emphasized that devotees should experience Krishna consciousness as joyful and that marriages should be joyful. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 9:2, "This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed." So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, the process of devotional service is a very happy one, sukham. Why? Devotional service consists of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So one can simply hear the chanting of the glories of the Lord or can attend philosophical lectures on transcendental knowledge given by authorized acharyas. Simply by sitting one can learn. Then one can eat the remnants of the food offered to God, nice palatable dishes. In every state, devotional service is joyful. Srila Prabhupada adds, therefore, the devotional process is very nice, and it can be executed in a happy mood. And Srila Prabhupada ends the purport by saying that Krishna consciousness is the purest form of religion, and it could be executed joyfully without difficulty. So we would like to explore how by following the guidelines set forth in the Sastra, the Grihastha ashram can support our joyful and successful practice of devotional service.
So, guideline 1. one can make spiritual advancement as a Grihastha. The Grihastha ashram is part of the varnashram system of social and spiritual orders, which consists of the 4 varnas, or occupational groups, and the 4 ashrams, or stages of life. The 4 ashrams are brahmacharis, students, Grihastha, householder, vanaprasth, retired, and sannyas, renounced. Ashram means shelter. What makes the ashram a shelter is that all activities are organized around the goal of pleasing Krishna. Each ashram has duties and responsibilities. Grihasthas have many expansive activities and responsibilities that require much time, energy, and resources. But if one links all these activities to serving Krishna and Krishna's devotees, then these activities and responsibilities are actually devotional service for the Grihastha. Grihasthas are situated in such a way that they have the opportunity to serve the Vaishnavas and all the other ashrams in various ways with their time, energy, finances, and resources. If we have healthy, happy families and communities, then we will naturally produce healthy, happy, strong brahmacharis, grihasthas, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis. Simply by joining an ashram does not make one spiritually advanced. Krishna is attracted by the unmotivated loving service of his devotees, which is not limited to any particular material situation, economic status, gender, race, or ashram. Often, there's the misconception that the very nature of Grihastha life greatly limits spiritual advancement. That is true only if one has a Grihamedi consciousness. Grihamedi means one approaches household life with the consciousness of sense gratification. If one takes on the full responsibility of the Grihastha ashram as a shelter where he or she can cultivate pure love of God, then surely it is being used as it was designated and intended. In a class in India on February 12, 1971, Srila Prabhupada highlights this point as he mentioned that out of the 12 Mahajans, 7 of them are Grihasthas. So Srila Prabhupada in that class, he listed the Mahajans and then he continued, quote, so the number of Grihasthas are greater than the Brahmacharis, but they are Mahajans. It doesn't matter whether he is a Grihastha or Brahmachari. Just like we are practically following, we are giving equal rights to everyone, either Grihastha or Brahmachari or Sannyasi. The main center is Krishna. One who is advanced in Krishna consciousness is all right. It doesn't matter what he is. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's recommendation. End quote. Then Srila Prabhupada quotes Lord Chaitanya's statement to Ramananda Roy from Majjhila 8:128. Kiba vipra kiba nyasi, sudra kane noy, ye Krishna tattvaveta se guru hoy, which translates to whether one is a brahmana, a sannyasi, or a sudra, regardless of what he is, he can become a spiritual master if he knows the science of Krishna. Then Srila Prabhupada states, anyone who is conversant, well conversant in the science of Krishna, he is guru. He is Mahajan. He is following actually the Mahajans. End quote. In Lord Chaitanya's talks with Ramananda Roy, he explains our actual original constitutional position in the famous verse that ends with Gopi Bhartu Parakamalayor Dasa Dasa Anudas. I am not a Brahmana, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya or a Sudra. nor am I a brahmachari, a householder, a vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. I identify myself only as the servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. So we want to awaken the remembrance of our identity as servant of the servant of the servant of the Supreme Lord by utilizing all the challenges and opportunities for purification that the Grihastha ashram brings. Guideline number 2. It is not necessary to leave home to make spiritual advancement. The 7th chapter of Madhya Lila discusses Lord Chaitanya's tour of South India. The Lord gives very clear instructions to Kurma Brahman about practicing bhakti at home. Srila Prabhupada explains that following these particular instructions given by the Lord himself to Kurma is the way to become an ideal householder. In this pastime, Kurma Brahman invited Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his home, and he served him with great devotion. Kurma washed the lotus feet of the Lord, and he and his family drank that holy water and served him a wonderful meal. After Lord Chaitanya gave his causeless mercy to Kurma and his family, Kurma begged the Lord if he could travel with him. Kurma said, "I can no longer tolerate the waves of misery caused by materialistic life." And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Don't speak like that again. Better to remain at home and chant the holy name of Krishna always. Instruct everyone to follow the orders of Lord Sri Krishna as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, become a spiritual master and try to liberate everyone in this land." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further advised the Brahmin Kurma, "If you follow this instruction, your materialistic life at home will not obstruct your spiritual advancement. Indeed, if you follow these regulative principles, we will again meet here, or rather, you will never lose my company." Mm-hmm. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is clearly stating that by following these 2 particular instructions, there will be no material impediments. He also declares that he will always be with him and will see him again. The next verse explains that these are the same exact instructions that Lord Chaitanya gave to all the householders he met and converted to his Sankirtan movement during his South India tour. And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport of Madhya Lila 7:129 that this is an opportunity for everyone. If one simply follows the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu under the guidance of his representative and chants the Hare Krishna mantra, teaching everyone as far as possible the same principle, the contamination of the materialistic way of life will not even touch him. This means that materialism cannot touch him. This is the secret of success for one advancing in Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada emphasizes in his purport to Madhya Lila 7:130 that even if one is completely surrendered, he can stay at home and preach. One who surrenders, this is Srila Prabhupada in the purport, one who surrenders to him, which is Lord Chaitanya, and is ready to follow him with heart and soul, does not need to change his location, nor is it necessary for one to change his status. One may remain a householder, a medical practitioner, an engineer, or whatever. It doesn't matter. One only has to follow the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and instruct relatives and friends in the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. One has to learn humility and meekness at home following the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in that way, one's life will be spiritually successful.
So guideline number 3, vigilantly create a home environment that is Krishna conscious and see your family members as Vaishnavas. These two may sound self-evident, but it is essential for the success of any Grihastha to be very, very intentional and vigilant about engaging in the 9 processes of devotional service in the home. The 9 processes are: 1, hearing about the Lord; 2, chanting his glories; 3, remembering him; 4, serving and meditating upon his lotus feet; 5, worshiping him; 6, praying to him; 7, thinking oneself his eternal servant; 8, becoming his friend; and 9, surrendering everything to him. We see in the Caitanya Caritamrta how householders were fully engaged in this way. It is so easy with the amount and variety of activities that are required for the functioning of a home, such as work and school and financial management and so on, for one to not be as attentive to and concentrated on one's spiritual practices. This is akin to living in a home in disrepair. The Grihastha ashram is a shelter. If we think about our physical shelter, if it had a hole in the roof so the rain comes in, if the windows were not insulated properly so the cold air and winds come in, or if there were holes in the foundation so that rodents come in, that would not be a protective environment. So as Grihasthas, we want our home environment to serve as a true shelter, such that the activities make us remember Krishna. In this way, we are fortified and our consciousness is protected from Maya. Secondly, we want to remember that our family members are Vaishnav, devotees of the Lord, and that our responsibility is to serve them. It is often easy in our family relationships to become familiar and take our family members for granted, to not treat them with the same gratitude and respect as we would others. It is also easy to have expectations that our family members are to serve us and meet our needs, versus remembering that as devotees of Krishna, we're always to see ourselves as servant of the servant of the servant. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has written a striking and sobering instruction on how we should see our spouses in an article entitled Relation Between the Sexes in his Holiness magazine. So it says, the cardinal principle of Grihastha ashram is that no one may be the owner of any property or service of another. Everyone is only a servant whose activities are ever in the service of the Lord. Similarly, the sole object of everyone's service as the only master, only friend, only son, and only consort is Krishna. Marrying and giving in marriage do not give rise to any rights of a master, either to the husband or to the wife. Men and women are joined in wedlock for the purpose of serving each other in the performance of the joint service of Krishna. The wife is not an object of enjoyment of the husband, nor vice versa. They do not marry for gratifying their sexual appetites. They marry for pleasing the Lord, not for pleasing themselves. They choose for their partners only such persons who serve God better than themselves. They offer themselves to be accepted by their partners for the favor of being allowed to share in their superior service of Hari. End quote. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is clearly pointing out that our consciousness in the Grihastha ashram should be to serve each other in the joint service of Lord Krishna. As I think about my unfoldment as a devotee in this lifetime, I cannot imagine being able to reach the level of growth that I've made as a devotee without my husband. His inspiring example, his encouragement, his commitment to his Krishna conscious practice, his broad spiritual knowledge base, kindness as a husband and father. He has so many admirable traits. During the course of our marriage, and we've been married it'll be 30 years in July. So about 18 years ago, I was diagnosed with a chronic health condition, which majorly changed our activities and services. So he serves the role of my caretaker as well, both physically and spiritually. And I, in my way, serve as his caretaker, as we support each other, as we strive to serve the Lord and his devotees to the best of our capacity. So clearly our spouses can be wonderful service teammates, which is actually truly a blessing for those who would like to enter married life. Of course, relationships are not always easy and are often challenging. For example, some aspects of our personality types are very different, even opposite, which is great at times in terms of balancing each other out. Yet at other times, it can also be quite challenging and frustrating for both of us. But what is the same since before we got married is our determination to devote our lives to serving the Lord. So for sure, marriage offers innumerable opportunities to learn tolerance, compassion, and surrender. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's message is also very important in how we view our children. It may happen that when devotees have children and see the impact that it has on their time, the activities and services that they prefer to or used to do, and the aspects that are not so glorious, they can wonder if child rearing is in fact devotional service. There's a famous letter from Srila Prabhupada about child rearing to Arundhati on July 30th, 1972. And so Srila Prabhupada says, I am in due receipt of your letter dated July 19th, 1972, and I'm simply surprised that you want to give up your child to some other persons, even they are also devotees. For you, child worship is more important than deity worship. If you cannot spend time with him, then stop the duties of pujari. At least you must take good care of your son until he is 4 years old. And if after that time you are unable any more to take care of him, then I shall take care. These children are given to us by Krishna. They are Vaishnavas, and we must be very careful to protect them. These are not ordinary children. They are Vaikuntha children, and we are very fortunate we can give them chance to advance further in Krishna consciousness. That is very great responsibility. Do not neglect it or be confused. Your duty is very clear. So firstly, the goal in having children for devotees is to make them Krishna conscious. By vigilantly and joyfully practicing Krishna consciousness in our homes by what we do, what we say, and how we live, our children will be inspired as well. These souls who are born in devotee families are quite special. And the children who come to us are perfectly designed to help us with exactly what we need to learn so we can let go of our attachments and come closer to Krishna. Thus, our interactions with our children, all children, are a great opportunity to develop so many wonderful devotional qualities, such as patience, tolerance, selfless service, and surrender. It's also a great opportunity to preach to ourselves as we pass down the Krishna conscious training that we received. Grihastha life is a great opportunity to practice being a devotee, to walk our talk. Not only can children help us develop devotional qualities, but as they blossom in their devotional unfoldment, they can keep us fresh and motivated and excited and educated. My children keep me updated on what is going on in the movement, the activities and needs of devotees, and keep me spiritually inspired overall. Their excitement for kirtan, deity worship, for attending temple programs, and so many other aspects helps offset a certain laxness that I find can creep in over time as a devotee. It keeps the joy in my and Jagannatha Pandit's Krishna conscious practice. All devotee children have their unique and potent gifts that can propel our Krishna consciousness if we are attentive and receptive and see them for the rare souls that they are. Just like the spiritual master fans the spark of our devotion, if we as parents and community members see and fan the sparks of the children in our midst, we all become eternal benefactors of the warmth of the Bhakti fire. Ultimately, Krishna conscious children are a great gift to our families, our local communities, and larger ISKCON, and they play an essential role in expanding Lord Chaitanya's movement far and wide to every town and village.
Guideline number 4, practice Krishna consciousness at your level. We can serve sincerely from whatever position that we are in. Lord Chaitanya's early instructions to Raghunath Das, who later became Raghunath Das Goswami, of course, are very instructive. Those instructions are very instructive. In whatever position we have, we always have our chanting, our devotional service, our instructions from our spiritual master. These are sufficient to help us progress at whatever level we are. Raghunath Das was naturally austere from childhood, although his family was extremely wealthy. He was the only heir to the wealth of the family. After meeting and serving Lord Chaitanya, he was so attracted to him that all he could think about day and night was going to be with his Lord. Raghunath's father had guards that thwarted his many attempts to run away. After finally convincing his father to let him meet Lord Chaitanya again, he was continually thinking how he could get free from the watchmen and stay with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya could understand his thoughts and instructed him, "Be patient and return home. Don't be a crazy fellow. By and by, you will be able to cross the ocean of material existence." And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes our sojourn in the material world as like being in a vast ocean from Brahmaloka down to Patalaloka and so many planets in between. We're all trying to get out of this ocean, but it takes time to swim across. And Srila Prabhupada says, quote, "One cannot immediately reach the coast, but if one endeavors, he can cross the ocean by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. One may be very eager to cross this ocean, but he cannot attain success by acting like a madman. He must swim over the ocean very patiently and intelligently under the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or his representative. Then one day he will reach the shore and return home back to Godhead." So Lord Chaitanya continued, and this is Madhya Lila 16:238. "You should not make yourself a show bottle devotee and become a false renunciant. For the time being, enjoy the material world in a befitting way and do not become attached to it." Srila Prabhupada discusses in this purport that being a show bottle devotee is like monkey renunciation. The life of a monkey appears to be one of renunciation. He doesn't wear clothes, no possessions, lives in trees, and only eats fruits and berries and living in the forest. But he's constantly gratifying his senses with so many female monkeys. And Srila Prabhupada states in the purport In order to render service to the Lord, one may accept necessary things. If one lives in this way, he may actually become renounced. And then in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.108, it is said, the bare necessities of life must be accepted, but one should not superfluously increase his necessities, nor should they be unnecessarily decreased. One should simply accept what is necessary to help one advance spiritually. Srila Prabhupada is saying that we can accept what is needed for our service to the Lord. Yukta Vairagya. One may need more or less in his service. This can change over time as one makes progress in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada emphasizes, quote, if one lives in this way, he may actually become renounced, end quote.
So guideline number 5, wear the Trnad Api verse around your neck. In the pastime of the Karma Brahmin mentioned earlier, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport to Madhya Lila 7:130, one has to learn humility and meekness at home, following the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in that way, one's life will be spiritually successful. Lord Chaitanya in his Sri Shikshashtakam prayers gave us the perfect formula of how to learn to be humble and meek at home or anywhere. Trnad Api sunichena tarariva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya saraharim. One who thinks himself lower than the grass, who is more tolerant than a tree, and who does not expect personal honor, yet is always prepared to give all respect to others, can very easily always chant the holy name of the Lord. Lord Chaitanya continues, Adi Lila 17:32, raising my hands I declare, everyone please hear me, string this verse on the thread of the holy name and wear it on your neck for continuous remembrance. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, when chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, in the beginning one may commit many offenses, which are called Nam Bas and Nam Aparad. In this stage, there's no possibility of achieving perfect love of Krishna by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Therefore, one must chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra according to the principles of the above verse. Trnad Api sunichena taroriva sahishnuna. So the special gift that has been given by Lord Chaitanya is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Due to his inconceivable mercy, he has come to give us this great boon. He says that we can very easily chant the holy name of the Lord if we strive to think of ourselves according to this verse. Number 1, more humble than a blade of grass. Number 2, more tolerant than a tree. 3, not expecting respect. And 4, always prepared to give respect. I love that phrase, always prepared to give respect. When we think about being prepared for something, it means we're situated at any moment to respond in a certain way. So we are situated at any moment ready to respond with respect. Think of how much smoother and joyful and beneficial our Grihastha activities could be if we earnestly and urgently took on this challenge. There's a really nice purport in CC Anchalila 3:207, and Srila Prabhupada says, a Vaishnav is always tolerant and submissive like trees and grass. He tolerates insults offered by others, for he's simply interested in chanting the holy name of the Lord without being disturbed. So I totally love that when I read that. And it made me laugh as it brought a certain thought to mind. So there's a phrase that was very popular in the U.S. a number of years ago. Ain't nobody got time for that. And the essence of the phrase means that one does not have time for things that take them away from things that are important. So when I read this verse, I immediately thought of that phrase in the sense that when one is totally absorbed in Krishna, he or she does not have time to be distracted by things like insults. We can all probably recall a time when we've been very absorbed in an activity that we like. Our focus is fully on that activity. Someone may call our name and we don't hear them. Someone could walk by and bump into us. We may not notice. Someone can nudge us and it wouldn't disturb us because we're so focused on our interests. So similarly, we want to be so focused on Krishna and his will that we don't have the time, energy, or interest to be distracted by anything that takes us away from his service. Each moment of our lives is so precious, and we never know how long we have in this body. So let's use this rare human form of life most effectively and wisely. Something that helps me is a statement that my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, would often say. Being humble is not to think less of yourself, but to think of yourself less. So as we interact with others, we can ask, in this situation, how can I think of myself less? I may have a preference, but someone else has a need. How can I think of myself less? I may want to do one thing, but my spouse would like to do something else. How can I think of myself less? My child wants my time. Right now, I don't feel up to giving it, but how can I think of myself less? This practice can help us experience the joy of selfless service. Now, as a psychotherapist, I do have a responsibility to state that we do not mean that one should accept abusive behavior under the aim of being humble, as Krishna does not want his devotees to be mistreated. Situations such as these require senior guidance and support to negotiate. So we want to wear this Trnad Api verse around our necks as a moment-by-moment reminder. And there are creative ways that we can. So Jagannatha Pandit is going to show, and I'm going to show these necklaces that we have. And if you look closely, it has the Trnad Api verse on them.
Trnad Api Sunitena Torapi Sahishnuna.
So we're going to put these necklaces around our neck, string them around our neck. And Jagannath and I made these necklaces in one of the Grihastha Vision Team's couples retreats in Gita Nagari. We've held these retreats annually since 2013 as a means of education, support, and association for married and engaged couples. Making these necklaces was an activity that the couples did together so they could wear them as a reminder of this essential instruction. The GBT members not only teach the sessions, but we also attend them so that we can enhance our marriage as well. So Jagannath and I had an opportunity to make necklaces with the group. We have them in a place where we can easily see them, and we wear them periodically to keep us on our spiritual toes. As part of your joyful execution of Krishna consciousness, you and your family can make Trnad Api necklaces as well, or come up with other creative ways to keep the Trnad Api verse alive in your home. The possibilities are endless. Haribo!
Guideline number 6. Serve the devotees and give in charity. Caitanya Caritamrta gives the blueprint for interacting with others. In Majjhilila 341, it discusses when Advaitacharya and his wife received Lord Chaitanya in their home. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that this is the ideal householder's life. The husband and wife living and serving together. The husband makes sure they have paraphernalia to serve the Lord. The wife cooks foodstuffs for the Lord. They perform arti, and the prasadam is served to the guests and family. So serving the Vaishnavas, having guests in your home is an essential principle for Grihasthas. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about the culture of his own home life as a child. His parents had at least 4 guests in his home every single day. This is a Vedic principle that before one takes lunch, he calls out loudly for anyone who is hungry to come, and the guests are fed even before the family. Srila Prabhupada calls this an austerity that Grihasthas perform. It takes time, energy, resources, and a strong desire to serve the Vaishnavas. Srila Prabhupada also shares in the purport, quote, although a person may live with his wife and children happily in Krishna consciousness, he also observes the regulative principles followed in any temple. If there is no Krishna consciousness, the householder's abode is called a Grihamedi's house. Householders in Krishna consciousness are actually Grihasthas, that is, those living in the ashram with their families and children. Sri Advaita Prabhu was an ideal Grihastha, and his house was the ideal Grihastha ashram. End quote. So one of the prime duties of Grihasthas is to give in charity. This can be in the form of giving prasadam, giving gifts, giving books, giving donations, etc. Giving and receiving prasadam, along with giving and receiving gifts and revealing one's mind and inquiring confidentially, are the 6 loving exchanges that Rupa Goswami mentions in the Nectar of Instruction. The Caitanya Caritamrta is full of these sweet, loving exchanges, saturated with love. Srila Prabhupada's life and his teachings were creating that same type of culture of devotion from the early days at 26 2nd Avenue. There was Krishna Katha, Srila Prabhupada giving class, prasadam, and Srila Prabhupada himself would initially do everything. He would do all the cooking, he would give the class, he would do the cleaning. He was teaching by example how to serve. And one of the 7 purposes of ISKCON that Srila Prabhupada established is, quote, to bring the members closer together for the purpose of teaching a simpler and more natural way of life, end quote. Simple living and high thinking. So when Grihasthas follow this principle of simply cooking and offering to Krishna, receiving guests with nice Vaishnava etiquette, when we do that, we're doing so many different things at the same time. What to speak of following the instructions of Lord Chaitanya. First, we're serving in the mood not to satisfy our own selves, but we're ready to give to everybody else. Anyone who's hungry, even if it means going without prasadam ourselves. By doing that, it trains us to not think in the mindset of I, me, and mine. So we're preparing meals daily, and we're thinking about who's going to be needing prasadam. So we're already in the frame of mind that first we're going to cook for the Lord. That means being clean in body and clean in consciousness, clean environment, clean home. And we're organizing our time and resources, cooperating in teamship with our spouse, and meditating on what would be nice for Krishna, what would be nice for the devotees, making the offering, and then we distribute the prasadam to the Vaishnavas. If we're doing this regularly, we're serving guests and giving the gift of Krishna in the form of prasad and Krishna Katha. It's nourishing on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. These simple, loving exchanges and are pleasing to those who are giving. It's pleasing to those who are receiving, and it's pleasing to Guru and Krishna. And it's just simply caring and sharing, which is actually putting love in action. Srila Prabhupada summarizes in a purport in the Nectar of Instruction, quote, "The life of the Krishna conscious society is nourished by these 6 types of loving exchange among the members." What that does is that creates a community of love. If people and communities are having that kind of love and culture, that's like the spiritual world. Just simple living and high thinking and loving pastimes and exchanges. In Lord Chaitanya's time, they didn't have all these weapons of mass distraction that Radhanath Swami mentions that we have here in this material world. It just boils down to these simple, authentic, loving exchanges. As Grihasthas, we don't have to have great opulence to give in charity. Simply a leaf, fruit, and flower, Krishna says. Most Grihasthas do not even have the opulence of Shivananda Sena. But we can follow the mood of service and giving and charity that he actually exemplified. Most important is having that mood of giving, that mood of service. And think of just these simple pastimes of Kolavecha Sridhar, just selling some little banana leaf cups. And Lord Chaitanya coming and bargaining with him and for half price and tugging on bunches of bananas back and forth with him, and just simple, loving exchanges, joking and playing. And what to speak of that illiterate Brahmin who couldn't read, but he was completely in tears describing the pastimes of Krishna, Parthasarthi, as Arjuna's chariot driver. And Lord Chaitanya embraced him and declared that his Bhagavad Gita reading was perfect. So we as Grihasthas can meditate on particular pastimes of exalted devotees in the Caitanya Caritamrta to help us develop the mood of heartfelt giving and the desire to deepen our loving exchanges with one another.
So guideline number 8. Guideline number 7. Have faith that the Lord is the most merciful and will always help us. In this material world full of anxiety, distress, and danger at every step, it's so easy to become hopeless or discouraged or afraid. The complications of Grihastha responsibility can also sometimes feel overwhelming and insurmountable. An honest appraisal of our own individual fallen states can also bring great grief and despair. It is important to always remember and never forget that the Lord is always here for us and will help, and always is helping us each step of the way on our path back home, back to Godhead. We see all throughout the pastimes of Caitanya Caritamrta how Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda extended their mercy beyond compare. In Ayalila 9:2, it is proclaimed, all glories to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the most merciful incarnation. All glories to Lord Nityananda, whose heart is always compassionate. There's the famous story of Jagannath, 2 drunkards who had committed the most abominable sins imaginable and were a dangerous disturbance to everyone. Despite their great offenses and Madai's unspeakable act of hitting Lord Nityananda in the head with the clay pot, causing blood to flow, Lord Nityananda interceded on his behalf, and the brothers were ultimately forgiven and delivered. In Adi Leela 16:1, it says, I worship Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose nectarian mercy flows like a great river, inundating the entire universe. Just as a river flows downstream, Lord Chaitanya especially extends himself to the fallen. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, Daya Kara More. He prays for Lord Chaitanya's mercy because he's the mercy incarnation, having appeared especially to reclaim the fallen souls. The more fallen one is, the greater one's claim to the favor of the Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'll read that again. The more fallen one is, the greater one's claim to the favor of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One must only be very sincere and serious. Despite being contaminated by all the bad qualities of this Kali Yuga, if one surrenders unto the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord will surely and certainly deliver him. The best example is Jagannath. In this age of Kali, practically everyone is like Jagannath, but the Sankirtan movement inaugurated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is still flowing like a great river, inundating the entire world. And thus, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is successfully claiming all fallen souls to free them from contamination. End quote. So there is hope for the Jagannath mentality we may see in ourselves, drunk with the addiction to the dictates of our senses. We too have been extended causeless mercy and divine help from the Supreme Lord and the Spiritual Master. Lord Chaitanya's love for us is so great that he has given us himself in the form of his holy name. Srila Prabhupada says in a letter to Nico Pugh on November 4th, 1969, in former ages, the processes of spiritual elevation were very difficult and long enduring. But in this age of Kali Yuga, our lives are so short and our minds are so restless that the process of spiritual realization must be very simple in order for success to be achieved. Therefore, Lord Krishna appeared in this world as Lord Chaitanya to show the fallen living entities the easiest and most sublime method of achieving Krishna consciousness. His formula is that everyone in any position of life should chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So this is what we are teaching. And any benefit you are feeling from this procedure is simply the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu acting. This point is very powerful. We must remember that any gain we are experiencing from our chanting is all due to the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. I would like to read the purport again from the pastime of Karma Brahman. To me, it gives such encouragement and hope. So Srila Prabhupada says, this material world is just like a big ocean. It begins with Brahmaloka and extends to Patalaloka, and there are many planets or islands in this ocean. Not knowing about devotional service, the living entity wanders about this ocean, just as a man tries to swim to reach the shore. Our struggle for existence is similar to this. Everyone is trying to get out of the ocean of material existence. One cannot immediately reach the coast, but if one endeavors, he can cross the ocean by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. One may be very eager to cross this ocean, but he cannot attain success by acting like a madman. He must swim over the ocean very patiently and intelligently under the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or his representative. Then one day he will reach the shore and return home back to Godhead. This is Krishna's promise. One day he will reach the shore and return home back to Godhead. So we must develop firm faith that the holy name can purify us, deliver us, and is the only means to success in the Grihastha ashram and all ashrams. Haranama, 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 Iva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Gatir Anyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. In self-development processes, there are exercises where you look in a mirror and repeat affirmations. You look at yourself deep in your eyes and make statements to transform your current views of yourself and your life to something higher. We want to develop a deep conviction of the truth of Lord Chaitanya's declaration. So we too can use this mirror strategy. We can daily look in the mirror, look at ourselves very deeply and proclaim, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way. 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 As we look in the mirror, we can deeply reflect on how the holy name cleanses the mirror of our hearts and stops the miseries of the blazing fire of material existence. Let us remind ourselves of this truth daily, in a mirror or otherwise, and approach the chanting of the holy name with absorption and surrender, with the Trnad Api verse around our necks.
So in closing, we'd like to summarize the guidelines that we have discussed. Guideline 1, one can make spiritual advancement as a Grihastha. Guideline number 2, it is not necessary to leave home to make spiritual advancement. Guideline number 3, vigilantly create a home environment that is Krishna conscious and see your family members as Vaishnavas. Guideline number 4, practice Krishna consciousness at your level. Guideline number 5, wear the Trnad Api verse around your neck. Guideline number 6, serve the devotees and give in charity. Guideline number 7, have faith that the Lord is the most merciful and will always help us.
So we'd like to close with 2 more points. The first is that in any endeavor to have success, there must be support and association. Spiritually nourishing sadhu sangha is required for Grihastha success. Our spiritual master emphasized the importance of spiritual communities, and only due to the support of the communities that we have been blessed to be part of, under his direction and guidance, have we even been able to even try to make some progress in this sacred ashram. Having friendship and mentor relationships are critical, as well as setting up supportive structures. One example that comes to mind is when we were new parents, there was a system that we mothers in Gita Nagari developed, where when a child was born, devotees signed up for cook days and rotated cooking for the family for at least the first month. Arrangements such as this help to create connections and reduce family stress, and can help create more stability and balance for Grihasthas, both materially and spiritually.
We also want to emphasize the importance of prayer, which is one of the 9 processes of devotional service. We can earnestly pray to the Lord to help us to take full advantage of the Grihastha ashram, to cultivate our true identity as servants of the servants of the servants. We can earnestly pray to the Lord to help us to remember the seriousness of the duty that we are taking on, and to help us fulfill our responsibilities with sincerity, joy, and increasing surrender. We can earnestly pray to the Lord to help us to chant with absorption and humility, and to share the mercy of the holy name with others by preaching through the message of our examples and through preaching activities. We can pray with full faith that the Lord hears our prayers and will do any and everything to help us come to him according to our desire. We close with deep gratitude to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, our own spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and the GBC Strategic Planning Team for giving us this wonderful opportunity to speak of the glories of the Caitanya Caritamrta. Engaging in this service was truly a purifying process, and our awe and excitement and deep gratitude for the nectar embedded within the pages of Caitanya Caritamrta has increased manyfold. So we pray that the devotees may find our efforts useful in some way.
Hare Krishna.